Ah, bonjour. Come to check out my custom N64. Look at that beauty. Extra ventilation in the top. Air induction ports in the sides. Yeah, I'm lying, that's a crap thing. Here we are. That paint job. If you're not watching in 720p, you really should be, because it's quite detailed. Crackle effect paint job. If the damn thing will focus anyway. That's done by using deliberately incompatible paints. Gloss gold on the bottom and the cream top coat is incompatible, so it cracks and tries to get away. But obviously it can't, so it sets like that. Looks quite nice though, I say it myself. Obvious cosmetic change. Switches and reset. No switches and reset. And also no expansion pack cover. It's all smooth on the top. Once the expansion pack's in there, it doesn't need to come out, so there's no point in keeping the hatch there really. The expansion pack is in there, and I removed the case from it and fitted a proper copper heatsink to it, so it runs nice and cool. Another obvious change, only a single controller port, mainly due to the fact that I'm on my own when I play on this most of the time. It's very rare when I actually need to play on it multiplayer, so I thought I'd clean the front of it up quite a bit. It's all perfectly smooth. A lot easier said than done, that is, because obviously you can't just desolder the controller ports, because then you've just got holes in the front. So that's what I bought this for. This was a broken N64 which I bought. I knew it was broken before I bought it. I didn't get stiffed. And I've harvested plastic from the case and made little semicircles. Meticulously made, I should say. It was a pain in the arse. I had to chop the plastic out, then sand and file it into little semicircles, then glue it in there, and then obviously when it's set, sand and file and cut it to shape so that it's got the proper overlap, which they have. This is not just, they don't just join together, they overlap slightly. So yeah, that looks quite nice. Obviously I've moved the power light as well. It's normally there, and I've moved it across to the side, mainly for OCD reasons, because that feature would have to be balanced out by a feature on this side. I've also turned it vertically. Looks quite nice, I think. There's actually a 2-function LED now as well. If I turn it on at the wall, red is actually standby now, not power. So it's got a standby light. When you switch it on, that goes a warm white colour, so it matches the sort of cream main colour of the actual console. Before anybody screams at me for robbing the N64 of 3 of its controller ports, they are still present. I made this. Probably the only N64 multi-tap you'll ever see. Plugs into the back, just in case I do want to play multiplayer games, which is once every 2 years or something. There's a 9-pin D-sub connector in the back of the console. I'll just show you if I can see. There we are. Much like a Mega Drive controller port, but obviously all of the tracks for controller ports 2, 3 and 4 are routed through to that, so it plugs into the back. So we can play multiplayer if I need to. This is an NTSC, a US console, so I've done the RGB mod to it. The video chip does actually output RGB, though Nintendo didn't use it for whatever reason, though they did on the Super Nintendo. So I've tapped RGB from that, amplified it, and I've done the C-Sync mod as well, so the video from it is as clean as you can possibly get from an N64. It does look good. That's a GameCube SCART lead, it goes through. Yeah, so obviously the title of it is Switchless, which it is, obviously. Not just these, I've also got rid of the actual hardware switches inside as well. They've been replaced with relays being electromagnetic switches in little boxes. The same thing you got in your car when your indicator's on, you hear that noise. That's the relay switching. And the relays in this, one latching and one momentary for power and reset respectively, they're controlled by a 2-channel coded FM receiver, which is about here, which in turn is controlled by that. So it's power and reset are done remotely via this fob, so that's where there's no switches there. I had to compromise the main heat spreader inside it to fit all the additional hardware in there. So if you look inside this one, there's the heat spreader. I had to chop off the right third of it in order to put things there, which was actually, I'd already decided to remove all the controller ports apart from one, which was actually a good idea because I couldn't keep these two here, it turned out, with all the extra stuff which is going to go on this side. I compensated for the removal of that part by putting a fan. There's a Noctua PC fan just under that vent there, which keeps things a little bit cooler. Not that the N64's got heat problems anyway, but I'm a big fan of fans. I've backlit the N64 badge as well. I'm not the first person to do this. I've seen other people backlight them, but they've used LEDs. And LEDs, it creates like a beam, so you get a sort of a hot spot, and then the rest of it's not very well lit. So I went the whole hog on this one. It's actually backlit by an electroluminescent panel, much like you'd find in a phone or a PDA. Obviously there's a driver for it in there as well, because EL panels run on, I think it's nearly 400 volts actually. 400 volts but only about 60 milliamps, so it can be run from the N64's power supply via the driver. But it gives a very, very uniform light. The whole logo lights up, it looks really nice. Yeah, I actually lied. There are 2 switches in this, but they're not required for the general use of the console. I don't know if you can see them. There they are. Tiny little switches. You have to switch them with a little pointy thing. The rear one controls the fan speed. It either goes through or bypasses a resistor. It's quite simple, between low and high speed. It's normally on low, but in case we have another horrible heat wave, I can make it go faster as well. And the front one turns off the illumination for the logo on the front, just in case I want to for some unknown reason. That's about it for the console, I think. I also did a bit of work to my Everdrive. The Everdrive 64, great piece of hardware. Bought this from retrotowers.co.uk. Didn't look like this when I bought it. It was just a board. You can buy them with cartridge cases, but I wanted to make my own. Gloss gold again, the same as the accents on that. Cut my little SD card slot in the top. And also, a lot of people probably don't know if they buy them with a cartridge case, the Everdrive actually has a access LED, a tiny little surface mount access LED, which is about there on the board. So I decided to make a bit of a feature out of my one, so I desoldered it, moved it across to the side, and that's actually the lens, the power lens from that broken N64. So I've made a bit of a feature out of the access light. It doesn't really do much, it just flashes when the SD card's being accessed. That's quite nice. I also vented the back of it for no real reason. They don't have a heat problem. Bloody focus. Looks quite nice. Obviously extra ventilation won't hurt anything, so it looks quite nice in case somebody's ambling around behind there in that foot of space. So yeah, well, I'll plug everything in and show you it going. Give me a sec. Controller. Can't stand the camera up because it's actually a phone, and phones are a bit flat these days. Lights off. Right. Oh yeah, before I go on about this actually, I promised myself I wouldn't go into loads of technical detail, but the way this switches on and off had to be a bit intuitive, if that's the right word, which it probably isn't. the power switch on a normal N64, anyone that's modded one will tell you that it's a horrible, I've actually still got it, it's a horrible quad pole switch. Here it is. It switches 4 things at the same time. Instead of just being like a normal switch, it switches 4 things. I think it's 2 grounds, 5 volt and 12 volt. I couldn't emulate that with a relay because relays are a single pole. You might be able to get double pole ones, I don't know. So how it switches on and off, live and neutral come in to the power supply box, but there the live actually bypasses it completely and goes with a piggybacked neutral into the case of the N64. I couldn't do this internally, there had to be a connector there because there's just no room. So the live and neutral go in there, power the FM receiver and go into the first relay. So when the first relay is closed, the live goes back out again to the power supply, and that's how it switched on and off with the live feed to its own power supply. Couldn't really do it any other way. Works well, but there is a slight delay. There's like a 2-second delay between actually switching it on and it coming to life, probably because of the power supply has to wake up. Yeah. There we are. Let's have a look at that logo. Looks a bit bright on the phone, looks nice in real life. Now the Everdrive is basically, well, it's classed as a backup device, but obviously it can't back up games. So it just is basically a ROM loader, and you can use it for good or evil like any of these things. If you play games which you don't own, you are breaking the law. All of these games I do actually own. I treat the Everdrive like a CD changer basically. It's very convenient not to have to change cartridges, especially in light of the fob. I don't even need to get up, so I don't have to expose myself to any unnecessary exercise, because exercise is bad for you. So if I just pick a game, Donkey Kong, little access light going. That one.
Okay.
Put that on smart. I can't be doing with that wrap. So once you're done playing a game, you just reset. It loads back in, and then you can just load another game. Nice and simple. So that's pretty much it. If you liked it, feel free to comment. If you don't like it, feel free to not comment. And thank you for watching.